Hello, my dear students. I am your teacher Raymar and welcome to our Mathematics 9 video lesson for quarter 3. In this video lesson, we are going to talk about the properties of parallelogram, with the most essential learning competency, determines the conditions that make a quadrilateral a parallelogram. Specifically, at the end of this video lesson, you are expected to determine the properties of parallelogram. But before that, let us review our previous lesson by answering the following puzzle words. Number 1. Polygons with 4 sides are called. Very good. Quadrilaterals is correct. Number 2. What are the 3 types of quadrilaterals? You're amazing! Trapezium, trapezoid, and parallelogram are correct. Number 3. It is the type of quadrilateral with no parallel sides. Exactly, that is trapezium. Number 4. A quadrilateral that has only one pair of parallel sides is called trapezoid. That's correct. Number 5. A special type of quadrilateral that has 2 pairs of parallel sides. Perfect. That is parallelogram. And last, number 6. What are the 3 kinds of parallelogram? Congratulations, you got it right. Rectangle, rhombus, and square are the kinds of parallelogram. And now, moving forward to our lesson, to answer the question, what are the conditions that make a quadrilateral a parallelogram, we need to discuss about the properties of the parallelogram. To start with, when we say properties, this refers to the attributes, the qualities, or characteristics of something. So here, presenting to you are the 5 properties of parallelogram, in which we are going to talk about one by one. Starting with the property number 1. In a parallelogram, any 2 opposite sides are congruent. Look at the following parallelograms. On the left, we have a rectangle whose side MA is congruent to its opposite side HT. And aside from that, side MH is congruent to its opposite side AT. Now look at the square at the center. What can you say? Very good. Side FI is congruent to the opposite side DN, and side FD is congruent to its opposite side IN. How about on this rhombus? Okay, side SO is congruent to its opposite side VL. And what else? Very good. Side SV is congruent to its opposite side OL. Did you get it? Very good. Always remember that in a parallelogram, any 2 opposite sides are always congruent. That is property number 1. Up next is property number 2. In a parallelogram, any 2 opposite angles are congruent. Look at the rectangle. Marking with are the opposite angles. where angle M is congruent to angle T. Another, angle A is congruent to angle H. Now let's move on to the next parallelogram. Angle F is congruent to angle N. And another, angle I is congruent to angle D. Now, on the third parallelogram, I want you to identify two opposite angles that are congruent. Very good. Angle S is congruent to angle L. What else? Perfect. Angle O is congruent to angle V. Remember, that is property number 2. Any two opposite angles of a parallelogram are always congruent. So we are done with property number 1 and property number 2. Now, let's move on to property number 3. In a parallelogram, any two consecutive angles are supplementary. Consecutive angles are angles in a polygon that share a common segment or side. In our example, angle M and angle A are consecutive angles. Another, angle A and angle T are also consecutive angles. We have also angle H and angle T. And also angle M and angle H. Supplementary angles are two angles whose sum is exactly 180 degrees. Since our example is a rectangle, in which each angle is equal to 90 degrees, it is very clear that the sum of the consecutive angles is equal to 180 degrees. Now, let us have another example of parallelogram. At this point, I want you to identify the consecutive angles that are supplementary. Very good. It is very clear that even without knowing the measure of each angles, as long as it is a parallelogram, any two consecutive angles are always supplementary. Okay, one more example. Identify the consecutive angles that are supplementary. The answers are the following. Did you get it? Very good. So, we are done with properties number 1, number 2, and number 3. Now, let's move on to property number 4. The diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. Remember, diagonal is a segment that connects two opposite vertices. And the word bisect means it divides a segment into two congruent parts. In the example, the diagonals VO and SL bisect each other at point E, which means the line segment SL is divided into two congruent parts, such as line segment SE is congruent to line segment LE. At the same time, line segment VO is divided into two congruent parts, such as line segment VE is congruent to line segment OE. Okay, another example. The diagonal HA bisect the diagonal MT at point Y. What conclusions can you give? That's correct. Line segment MY is congruent to line segment TY, and line segment AY is congruent to line segment HY. Okay, let us try another example. When the diagonal FN bisect the diagonal DI at point S, what conclusions can we give? Alright, that's correct. Line segment FS is congruent to line segment NS, and line segment IS is congruent to the line segment DS. Very good, my student. So we are done with the properties number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's move on to the property number 5. A diagonal of a parallelogram forms two congruent triangles. So when a diagonal is drawn on a parallelogram and cut it, we can form two congruent triangles. Identifying the corresponding congruent sides of these two triangles, we can identify the two triangles that are congruent. In this example, the two triangles that are congruent are triangle MAH is congruent to the triangle THA using the SSS postulate. Let us have another example. What are the two congruent triangles formed? That's correct. Triangle FID is congruent to triangle NID. How about this last example? What are the two congruent triangles formed? Very good. Triangle SVL is congruent to triangle SOL. Remember, that is the property number 5. A diagonal of a parallelogram forms two congruent triangles. And now, to check the level of your understanding, let us have a short activity. Fill in the blank. Number 1. In a parallelogram, any two opposite sides are blank. That's correct, congruent. Number 2. In a parallelogram, any two blank angles are congruent. Very good, opposite. Next, number 3. In a parallelogram, any two consecutive angles are blank. Very good, supplementary. Next, number 4. The blank of a parallelogram bisect each other. That's correct, diagonals. And last, number 5. A diagonal of a parallelogram forms two congruent blank. Perfect. The answer is triangles. To deepen your understanding, let us have another activity. Using the properties of parallelogram, answer the following. Number 1. Given the parallelogram ABCD, if AB measures 20 centimeters, what is the measure of CD? That's correct, 20 centimeters also. Next, number 2. Given the parallelogram ABCD, if angle A measures 115 degrees, what is the measure of angle C? That is correct, 115 degrees also because they are congruent. Next, number 3. Given the parallelogram ABCD, if angle B measures 80 degrees, what is the measure of angle C? That is correct, 100 degrees because they are supplementary. Next, number 4. Given the parallelogram ABCD with diagonals BD and AC that intersect at point E, if BD measures 30 centimeters, what is the measure of BE? That's correct, 15 centimeters. Number 5. Given the parallelogram ABCD with diagonal BD, what triangle is congruent to triangle ABD? That's correct, triangle CDB.
I hope that everything that you've learned in our video lesson will be applied as you answer your module in Mathematics 9. Always remember, apply the formula of a successful life. That is, to eliminate all the negative vibes and to sum up all the positive vibes. Another, success is the fruit of complex capabilities. In other words, intelligence is not enough to fulfill your dreams. It needs perseverance, hard work, and others. And always dream. Believe on your dreams and succeed. Laging tandaan na ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan. Kaya dapat kayong mag-aral ng mabuti, gawin ang mga activity ng may husay at galing. And that ends our video lesson. Always remember, pray to God and keep safe. Hanggang sa muli nating pag-aaral, bye-bye!